And so I would try to make sure that we did talk about the human rights of LGBTQI people, because if we didn't raise these issues, well, silence is consent. Well, so for those of your listeners who aren't familiar with the concept of a special envoy, it's basically like the equivalent of being an ambassador, but it
Mhm.
tends to be focused on a human rights or thematic issue. And so it's a way of creating a senior diplomatic position who is seized with typically a human rights abuse. Um, and so, in this capacity, I led US foreign policy on LGBTQI concerns. And that became an excellent way to amplify our legal and social progress on these issues
Mhm.
to help LGBTQI people who are the victims of danger in countries around the world. And so, I would try to make sure that we did talk about the human rights of LGBTQI people, because if we didn't raise these issues, well, silence is consent.
Right.
And in my role, what I did was I worked with our embassies around the world to ensure that they understood what was happening for LGBTQI people at the country level.
Mhm.
I worked constantly with LGBTQI activists on the front lines and really worked as hard as I could to amplify their priorities. And I worked with our colleagues in Washington, D.C. to ensure that in multilateral levels and in every senior government statement that human rights of LGBTQI people were taken into account.
Mhm. And what would you say you're most proud of during those 4 years?
Um, I was proud that we helped pass the first ever resolution on intersex rights at the UN Human Rights Council.
Ah.
I was proud that we had the second ever Security Council aria on LGBTQI people in war and conflict. I was proud that when the LGBTQI movement of Japan was fighting for its first ever federal non-discrimination law, we backed them. And while that law that they wanted didn't pass, a different version passed, an LGBT awareness bill, which is the hardest step. It's the first step.
Mhm.
I was proud that in one country that shall remain nameless, I had a series of extremely consequential meetings where I presented them with data about so-called conversion therapy practices in their country. And the result was they announced the depathologization of homosexuality in their country and that conversion therapy practices would be banned from all federal healthcare facilities. But I would wish that we would have more human rights diehards in government so that we can use that power for good.